whatever is left of the Islamic Republic leadership clearly is saying a big no to Donald J. Trump. They are instead opting for continuity inside their regime. And in fact, I think they're doing more than that. They're essentially saying to Trump that, they're not going to be persuaded by his pressure campaign that we're seeing unfold, which is happening obviously mostly militarily, but also through the political messaging that Donald Trump has sent to Tehran over the course of the last 8-9 days now. So the appointment of Mujtaba Khamenei is the reflection of the fact that the hardliners in that system now have the upper hand. Not only are they saying they're going to continue this fight, at least in the short term militarily, but they're also saying politically they have a game plan. And that, as far as I can tell, in Washington, should be a wake-up call, because whatever political agenda President Trump had in terms of changing Iran, right now that agenda is not happening. Mujtaba Khamenei's name has been floating around for years as a potential, and actually some would say likely, successor to his father. And yet we have plenty of evidence that his father had been against it. And his father had said, I do not want my son to take over from me, because that would become a successor from a son to a father. From a father to a son, which is exactly what the Islamic Revolution of 1979 was all about, to end hereditary succession. So the fact that Mujtaba Khamenei is now the new supreme leader tells us much more about power politics in the system today. The hardliners have the upper hand. If they didn't, Mujtaba Khamenei's appointment would have been a question mark. Now it's become a certainty. When it comes to Mujtaba Khamenei, there are two things we need to watch out for. One, we already kind of know, which is he comes from that ideological core part of the Islamic system. His background has not, despite the fact that he's a cleric, but really he's more of an intelligence person more than anything else. He's very close to the Revolutionary Guards. He is one who believes in the use of force against both domestic opponents and foreign adversaries. He has not, as far as I can tell, over the 20 so years we've known him, expressed any opinion that suggests he is a reformist of any sort. So he's an Islamist revolutionary hardliner. At least that's his track record. But here's the thing that we need to keep in mind as well. The Iranian regime is under immense pressure, both from outside, but also from within. So the big question is, which turn would he potentially take going forward? Mujtaba Khamenei could reinvent himself. He doesn't have to be the Mujtaba Khamenei of the last 20 years. He could be very different going forward for the sake of the survival of the regime, which means compromising at home, which means compromising abroad. His father did the same thing. His father was not a hardliner in 1989 when he took over, but he reinvented himself and became a hardliner. His son, this fellow Mujtaba Khamenei, could do the opposite, go in a different direction. Now, that will take time. He has some obviously strong support base in the Revolutionary Guards. For now, I don't think he's going to express anything that would suggest reform or what Donald Trump would call capitulation. That's not going to happen. But what could happen is if this war somehow ends and this system survives, then they have some real tough decisions to make, because their problems are fundamentally not with Donald Trump. The problem of the Islamist regime is with the Iranian people. And that is why Mujtaba Khamenei, if his advisors tell him the truth, would have another hard look at the society that his father brought to the brink of disaster, and perhaps choose to chart a different course going forward. So much depends on the overall Israeli strategy. If they decide to double down, if they really decide to maintain this sort of confrontation and stay in this war in days, weeks, months to come. That's a political decision. It comes down to what Prime Minister Netanyahu wants to do. And it also comes down to the capacity of the Israelis to stay in this war, particularly if the United States decides to look for a way out. But if they decide to stay in this war, and if regime change is what they want ultimately to achieve, what we do know from the Israelis is a significant capacity to do what they say they will do when it comes to assassinating the adversaries that they identify. They did that with the leader of Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hassan Nasrallah. They've done it with other people that Israel has considered threats to their national security. So we also know the Israelis have, in recent years, badly infiltrated the Islamist regime in Tehran. So if the Israelis do decide to assassinate him, and there will be a political cost associated with that, but that's something they have to decide. If they decide to assassinate him, in terms of capacity to do so, should not be dismissed. Mujtaba Khamenei has very good reason to be worried about his survival, and I'm sure he will go out of his way, and his supporters will make sure he's secure to the extent that they can secure his physical well-being. But again, we shouldn't underestimate Israel's capacity, since they've infiltrated the Iranian regime so much, their capacity to find him and to assassinate him if that's what they choose to do politically. As of today, it does not look like it's going to happen. And as of today, President Trump's biggest challenge now is, can he call this a victory? Can he walk away and say, achieve what I wanted to achieve? He can say the killing of Ali Khamenei was what he wanted to do. That represents regime change. Many will be doubtful that it has actually achieved anything significant. In fact, you could say leaving Mujtaba Khamenei in charge of Islamic Republic, someone who might not have become supreme leader. And now, because the conditions of war made it easier for this 56-year-old to become the supreme leader, and the United States leaves him in power and walks away, there's a relatively young man in charge of a pretty large country in the Middle East with a lot of desire to seek revenge for years to come. And that, I don't know how you can possibly portray that as anything that looks like victory for the United States, but President Trump might just do that.
伊朗专家会议已经确定哈梅内伊之子穆杰塔巴担任下一任伊朗最高领袖。这个穆杰塔巴是哈梅内伊的暗儿子，年轻时服役于伊朗革命卫队，参加过1980年到1988年的两伊战争，也是从战火里走出来的汉子。自从哈梅内伊成为伊朗最高领袖后，穆杰塔巴主要有两重身份。第一重身份，哈梅内伊的影子总管，专门帮哈梅内伊稳固权力中枢，千砖加瓦。在他的一手操持下，最高领导人办公室的人员编制从1989年的80人，硬生生涨到了2019年的4000人，规模翻了50倍。这期间，穆杰塔巴还亲手打造了这个机构的两大关键支柱，其一是统辖17个机构的情报网络，其二是掌控着多家官方媒体和周五讲到的宣传机器。而这些关键部门的关键人，全都是当年跟他一起并肩作战的战友，绝对忠心。第二重身份，伊朗民兵组织巴斯基组织的实际掌控者。这个组织是伊朗伊斯兰革命卫队的核心森支力量，人数超1000万，遍布全国每一个社区、学校和机构，既是国内稳定的压舱石，也是战时最可靠的动员力量。穆杰塔巴手握着这支全民性力量，等于把伊朗的基层社会彻底攥在手里。不管从哪个角度看，哈梅内伊这明摆着就是把穆杰塔巴当成接班人在培养。可很多人不知道的是，哈梅内伊不止一次在公开场合表达过反对世袭统治的立场，将他的儿子接班排除在外。而他之所以这么说，是因为当时霍梅尼推翻巴列维王朝最核心的诉求之一，就是打破以巴列维王室为核心的世袭权贵。也正是因此，霍梅尼去世后，并没有把最高领袖的职位传给自己的儿子，而是传给了哈梅内伊。那么问题来了，既然不传位于儿子，是伊朗最高领袖换人时不成文的规定，伊朗革命卫队为啥还要全力支持穆杰塔巴父死子继呢？其实这跟伊朗现在的特殊局势有着直接的关系。现在的伊朗是实打实的战时状态。自从哈梅内伊被斩首后，最高领袖这个位置已经超越了韩国总统，成为了全世界最危险、最烫手、谁做谁挨打的死亡职位。说句不好听的，今天刚当上最高领袖，明天能不能看到太阳都还是个未知数。毕竟哈马斯、杰哈德、真主党那么多高层接连被暗杀，前车之鉴就在眼前，谁也不想拿自己的命去赌。但穆杰塔巴不一样，他是唯一一个不怕被暗杀的人。他如果活着，就是伊朗复仇的旗帜，明明白白诠释着伊朗全体人民要为哈梅内伊复仇雪耻的战斗意志。他如果被斩首，也能瞬间成为什叶派历史上又一位殉道圣徒。到时候伊朗的复仇火焰只会烧得更彻底、更疯狂。而现在的伊朗根本不需要一个会搞外交、会跟西方谈条件的领袖，他需要的是一个立场绝对强硬、根基绝对稳固、谁也动摇不了、谁都收买不了的死士领袖。而穆杰塔巴刚好就是那个完美人选。但是哈梅内伊的儿子是殉道者的后代，还是革命卫队一手捧起来的自己人？这几层身份摆在这里，就决定了他一上台就天然绑定了为父报仇、为国死战的政治正确。他没有任何退路，不能妥协，不能谈判，更不可能跟美以媾和，只能一条路走到黑。 更关键的是，穆杰塔巴几十年的布局早已为他铺好了所有路。他手里的情报网络能让他第一时间做出正确的决策，他掌控的宣传机器能持续放大殉道复仇的声业，牢牢凝聚全国民意，让每一个伊朗人都记住仇恨，并肩作战。还有那支超1000万人的巴斯基民兵，只要他一声令下，就能快速动员，奔赴前线。而这一切，恰恰是梅伊最不想看到。原本梅伊想通过斩首哈梅内伊，让伊朗群龙无首，陷入内乱，不战自溃。可他们万万没想到，自己砍掉的只是一个做事留有余地的妥协派领袖，换来的却是一个跟他们不死不休的复仇者。穆杰塔巴的新王登基，不是伊朗内乱的开始，反而是伊朗全面反击死磕梅伊的全新起点。接下来，中东的战火只会越烧越旺，没有回头路。梅伊接下来要面对的，再也不是那个有所克制、偶尔还能谈一谈的伊朗，而是一个被复仇点燃、被强硬领袖带领、全国上下一条新的伊朗。而穆杰塔巴这位从幕后走到台前的影子总管，终将用自己的方式改写中东的格局，也让梅伊为自己当初的斩首行动付出最惨痛、最沉重的代价。